President Kennedy inspired us as great political leaders can do.
First time I saw President Kennedy was in 1956. I was 14 years old.
I was in the 8th grade when President Kennedy ran for office and was very, very inspired by the whole Kennedy administration.
He was just a great president, such great innovative ideas.
His call to public service, charging Americans with getting involved.
We have the poster from the Kennedy Library that says, every man can make a difference and every man must try. And what a better world we'd have in America if everybody lived by that.
Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage.
His legacy was an influence. I was 14 at a time. He's Roman Catholic, so am I. And giving back to the community is a value that is prevalent and a priority in my family.
He really wanted people to engage in the society they lived in and to become involved. And obviously the message was give back. And I think that message has lasted for 50 years now.
And he stirred me in a way that no other person has ever stirred me here on earth.
I'm here in short to discuss with you a problem which is not local but national, not northern or southern, eastern or western, but a national problem, a national challenge, a problem and challenge and responsibility and opportunity which will be before us all in the coming months and indeed in the coming years. And I'm talking about the problem of race relations. I must say I was impressed by the willingness of so many mayors to move ahead in this area. You can set an example in your communities to which the timid can rally and which those clinging to the past cannot ignore. I ask you to join with me to recognize the rights of all Americans in guiding along constructive channels, in working along constructive ways as a free society must, to attain a peaceful revolution which will not only avoid disaster, but much more importantly, fulfill our highest obligations. Thank you very much.
As a sophomore in high school and a member of our high school band, we had the opportunity to play and meet John F. Kennedy in our hometown. And I felt there was something very special about this man. He really, truly cared about the country. He truly cared about people.
It inspired me as a young person to engage in my civic activity, to get engaged in other things, to help people, and that became the idea of service.
The teachers and the nuns that I went to school with held up John F. Kennedy as a role model. And as the first Catholic president, they said to a lot of the Catholic students throughout my school, as well as throughout the entire country, that look, if John Kennedy becomes the president of the United States, any of you can achieve the goals that you set after.
Much like his household, I grew up in a household where my parents were both involved in fighting for civil rights. My father was an elected official, and I grew up watching him have a tremendous impact on our community, and it inspired me to do what I'm doing today.
Well, I think President Kennedy inspired my father. My father served in the state legislature in Ohio for 28 years, was the majority floor leader, the first African-American to serve in that position. And my mother and my father both told me and all of my siblings that we had to do something to give back in terms of public service.
Our problems are man-made. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again.
I was always encouraged by my parents to be involved politically and in community because they were active community volunteers. And it was just the feeling of the impact that one person could have on the world.
The two Kennedys, John and Robert, and Martin Luther King together, this was an incredible time in this country, a time of change, a time of promise, a time of great challenge. And I will just never forget the many, many things that he said, but more importantly, the things that he did.
I was in high school when he was serving as president, and I think he influenced all of us who are of that age to consider public service.
The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
His call to public service inspired me, and I've used his famous words, and we ask on these goals God's help and his blessings, but remembering always that here on earth, his work must truly be our own.
John F. Kennedy drove a lot of us to say, what is it that we can do to make our community better? And you had young people doing things with the Peace Corps who just felt this spirit that he brought, this youthful inspiration and excitement about doing something. And I think it still carries over with many of us still today.
Growing up and understanding his history, his brothers, what marks they've left on our ability to come together and unite as a country and work for our country.
I remember the legacy of Robert Kennedy and the work that was done in the South because of that. And it was a very important and poignant moment in my life to remember the importance of service and helping other people.
And you think about the things that he said during his presidency and the legacy that he left through his family and others in the Kennedy family. It is an inspiration.
With his brother, Bobby Kennedy, talking of myself being in grade school resonated because I think one of the things that when I became mayor, I looked back on my childhood memories in my hometown and wanted to see how we could change things.
I speak to you today, not of your rights as Americans, but of your responsibilities. For of those to whom much is given, much is required. You have responsibilities to use your talent for the benefit of the society which helped develop those talents. I urge all of you today to act, to enter the list of public service, knowing that your character and talent are contributing to the direction and success of this free society.
My grandmother had 3 pictures right as you walked in the door: Jesus Christ, Ted Williams, and JFK. And I thought that was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. When I was a little kid, I thought that was the Holy Trinity. It actually was. He left an indelible impression on a lot of people in their 50s and 60s who, you know, think it is still your obligation to be involved and make a difference.
The call to contribute to our country was really instilled in me from a very young age, in large part by President Kennedy and then by my mother. And that's one of the reasons why I went into public service.
It takes well-educated people who want to serve their communities. Otherwise, representative democracy just doesn't work. You need that educational piece, and you need the call to service. And, you know, that's where America is different than most other countries.
I have today signed an executive order providing for the establishment of a Peace Corps. This Corps will be a pool of trained men and women sent overseas by the United States government to help foreign countries meet their urgent needs for skilled manpower.
I remember him saying that you can't predict the future, but you can certainly prepare for it. Every time he spoke, I listened. It wasn't like someone else speaking and just drifted. I listened intently, and his message resonated with me.
President Kennedy was a hero for me and for many other people. He talked well, he thought well, people loved him, and I always had in the back of my mind it'd be neat to hold a public office, not necessarily the presidency, but something.
It showed me that one person can make a difference. I think that's where the whole concept of hope and the future really formed its way into politics.
He was just someone it was easy to relate to. He was a good dad and very mindful of the community and wanted to lift lives for people.
In a large sense, everything now depends upon what the government decides. If you want to participate, you feel strongly about any public question, it seems to me that governmental service is the way to translate this interest into action. That the natural place for the concerned citizens is to contribute part of his life to the national interest.
I look at the things people argue about, and they almost seem trivial compared to the ideals that people talked about back then. And things like duty and service and responsibility.
We consistently hear, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think if we all came back to that philosophy, we'd be in a better place. And it would be more about what we as Americans are and what we believe.